Hi, everyone. Scaling your business internationally can be a challenging task, especially when navigating through the unique cultural, legal, and economic landscapes of different countries. That's why we're very excited to introduce our upcoming series of webinars, Scale Beyond Borders, designed to help everyone understand the specificities of scaling in different regions around the world. Our expert speakers will share their insights on topics such as local market trends, regulation frameworks, consumer behaviors, and more. Wherever you're looking to expand to Africa, Europe, or beyond, our webinars will provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to succeed in new markets. I am happy to have my dear friend Ahmed Bastawy as the first guest of these webinars. I will let him introduce himself and ICEALEX.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thanks a lot, Mayssa, for inviting me and the Njano team, for allowing me to be here in the first episode in this amazing podcast, Skill Beyond Borders. I'm so excited actually to be here. I'll introduce myself briefly, and then I'll also share or emphasize on what you have said about why this episode or this episode series in general is important. So this is Ahmed Bastawy, and I'm the managing director of ICEALEX. And I stands for Innovation, Collaboration, Entrepreneurship. It's based in Alexandria, the beautiful Alexandria, because I'm advocating for the Mediterranean and Africa as well, today and always. And so it's based in Alexandria in Egypt, but also works across the continent. So we have been operating in more than 18 countries so far, with the mission actually on creating better jobs and supporting growing businesses in doing good and doing well. And that's part of our mission as well. So we have actually had this innovation consultancy arm where we consult governments, NGOs, and large enterprises in scaling, adapting innovation strategies, and working on a bottom-up approach base. And also we have the Ventures Launchpad where we support entrepreneurs and growing businesses through incubation and acceleration programs. And I'm so happy actually again being with you here today, Mayssa. Thanks a lot for the invitation. And I believe that the Scale Beyond Borders, the idea is amazing. And I'm so passionate about seeing how it will evolve, because I'm sure you'll be able to have amazing guest speakers and also different audience from across the continent. And I think it's super needed. We need to scale beyond borders, as we see from the title. But also, in order to do that, we need to understand, how this scaling could look like, because most of the times we try to scale outside of the continent, unfortunately. But I believe there are so much potential inside the continent, but we need to understand, we need to learn, we need to untap this potential. So I think today we'll start the journey together.
Yes, exactly. So I prepared a few questions for you, but we'll be accepting also some questions in comments. So please, let's make this live as much interactive as it could be. So what can you tell us about the Egyptian market? What are the most rising, trending sectors in Egypt right now?
Yeah, it's so the Egyptian market is super kind of, I would say, flexible and super accommodating. And this is the beauty of any startup that is trying to kind of land here, but also to start the validation stage. So it's super amazing when you have an idea, you want to test it on the ground, and you want to see some potential customers and try to test that out. So I consider the Egyptian market is kind of always an early adapter from what I've seen from the different sectors. So this gives a big potential for trying out different new ideas, different crazy ideas, different products and services in the market. And yet the market is super fragmented, which is so today we'll speak also about the pros and cons and the difference, let's call it tips and tricks. So it's also super fragmented. So if you don't know how you're tapping into the market, you'll not be able actually to see where's the market exactly. But we all agree that it's more than 100 million population inhabitants in Egypt, and this gives a big potential for anything. and it's super diverse in terms of the the class, the social standards, and like the economic power, purchasing power as well. And this gives a lot of kind of potential to test with wherever kind of segmentation you have in mind as an entrepreneur. And speaking about the sectors, Mayssa, so I think like over the past, let's speak about the insights coming from 2022. So fintech continued actually to be the star of the venture capital funding in Egypt, and this was backed by a number of initiatives like the FinTech Act, and later on we speak about regulatory frameworks. The FinTech Act that was produced last year was actually a leapfrog in the whole regulatory aspect, because fintech needs to be backed by government, and so we like proudly had like the first FinTech Act produced last year. So fintech has been accommodating actually the top industries by total number of funding, by total funding actually in Egypt in 2022. I believe like it was more than $200 million of total funding allocated for the fintech startups. And then comes the e-commerce and the online shopping era. And that was seriously booming, not only in Egypt, but also globally after the COVID-19. And that was giving actually a huge potential for everyone, because customers in this sense, or consumers, were kind of reluctant somehow. Not everyone is kind of flexible to use e-commerce, and they prefer to go to the offline shopping. But with the COVID-19, that was not a choice anymore. And then on the third pillar, I would say comes the transport and logistics sector. And Egypt has like mega projects happening at the moment. So transport and logistics sector are also booming with that. And there are so much potential if you have an idea in the transport and logistics or e-commerce or fintech, like Egypt would accommodate that easy. And then afterwards comes the retail sector, and then the healthcare. And this is coming actually from different statistics and reports produced last year in a couple of months ago actually. And then I would add as well like the emerging renewable energy and sustainability sector, especially post COP27 that was hosted in Egypt last year, but also the EdTech sector, because education is a big actually thing in Egypt as well. Yeah, so these are like kind of the 7 sectors clustered with like the top total funding allocated in Egypt, from what I see at least.
Great. Can you tell us about more the innovation ecosystem scene? How has been the evolution through these last years? And who are the main actors supporting the growth phase right now?
Yeah, it's you asked a very interesting question, because you specified your question in the growth stage, and I think most of the people are suffering in the growth stage, because you can see a lot of actors supporting the idea stage, or like we call it like the startup stage as well. But then when you are growing, you're not either considered as a startup sometimes or a company, or a large enterprise in this sense. So you are kind of swinging in between those two. So organizations are not always kind of steering these kind of support different opportunities towards these. Because also prioritizing, if you are a donor, for example, you'll prioritize actually putting the money into someone like who are in this stage that is starting, than like those who are kind of you consider as steady and stable somehow. But in reality, like those startups in the growth stage that we might not see as startups anymore are in super need for different kind of support, like governance interventions, because when they scale, they used to be like a startup where like they do things like on ad hoc basis, even if they have like proper planning in place. They have like different kind of agile teams. They have different kind of funding structures. But then when you scale, you are actually like expanding and stretching all your resources in different horizons, in different locations, in different kind of funding schemes as well. So I think you need like many kind of support in this stage. And I would say like in this stage, I would say like that we have like some international players. Also, this is important to note for others who are like coming to Egypt, but also for Egyptian startups as well, like 500 startups, Techstars, plug and play, and they operate regionally. So this is one pillar, and also many others. I'll just like mention examples, not like an exhaustive list. But also we have like some INGOs who can support international organizations who can support actually these different stages, either like through debt financing or putting some technical capacity building, or supporting in different capacities here, like the EBRD, like the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, support a lot the green sector evolution and development, but also the GIZ support technically so much. And also USAID has some interesting components and programs in place that can support these kind of specific stage as well, not only the earlier stages. But then we have like different kind of local players with international exposure, or like, I don't know if this is like the right phrasing for, or like titling for that, but like Flat Six Labs, of course, is worth mentioning because they operate in the whole region, backed up by Saudi Ventures and others. But also you have like these kind of support organizations that are not specifically putting these funds to support, but rather like support programs, as I was mentioning. And Impact is one of them. And I believe like they used to be operating in Tunisia as well. They operate in Egypt at the moment, and in other places as well, like globally, and in Germany, of course. But also like, not because I'm representing ICEALEX, we do not provide like the funding directly, but also we support like in these kind of soft landing processes, not only from outside to Egypt, but actually across the African continent through the network. And I believe like one of the important worth mentioning as well, we are both coming from the same kind of network as well, which is ICEALEX. So ICEALEX is one of the interesting kind of like guru organizations that has been supporting these kind of innovation hubs or intermediaries to support actually startups across different stages. And just like to recap this part, so the growth stage, as I was mentioning, is very tricky. And I always love actually to picture this kind of graph where in the like 12 years ago, like Egypt had like organizations that you can count on one hand. But now when you see like the different mapping efforts that have been trying to map, you cannot actually put them in one page. So with many kind of sectors, with many kind of specializations, with like kind of different appetites as well towards investment and towards stages as well. So, and this is important to mention that like in the span of like more than 10 years, which is nothing, I would say, you can see this kind of growth that was happening because of the efforts coming from the civil society, private sector, government organizations, and international players as well. So this is an opportunity for everyone also to think about it and to think how to plug into the right organization, because sometimes also at Mayssa, we have been seeing that if you are a startup in a specific stage and trying to reach out to a wrong kind of actor, you might get frustrated and you say that the whole ecosystem is not kind of supportive as well.
True, it's the same everywhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So we've been talking about support, of course, but people scaling, entrepreneurs scaling in other countries what they need the most is, of course, the funding. So I was curious to know what are the best funding opportunities available now for entrepreneurs in Egypt, with the VC scene, investment opportunities, and what are the most important criteria, investors in Egypt look to?
So I would actually question what you were mentioning, if you allow me. So do you really think that actually entrepreneurs are mostly in need for funding? Because I don't think so.
It
depends on the stage, of course, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it depends on the stage, but also most of the cases, like I always see it like on a reverse phase. Most of the startups who have failed didn't fail because they were lacking proper funding. They failed maybe because of the team. When they grew like very kind of fast, they were not prepared as a team or as an organization with the OC they have. they were not able actually to, they actually lost sometimes touch with the customers. So they scaled, and they plugged in different technology layers that basically prevented them of to see the customers anymore. So they started dealing with the customers as numbers instead of like as human beings with like interactions with aspirations and failures and and frustrations as well. And this is a super tricky, right? And because I believe funding is existing, and there are many organizations who are offering funding. But yet, I have to say that these organizations who are offering funding, they're always kind of complaining because they do not see, most of the times at least, quality entrepreneurs. And this is ironic, right? And then on the other side, myself, at least from my personal experience, I see amazing entrepreneurs and super amazing entrepreneurs across the continent, and they're always complaining, most of them at least, because they cannot find the proper funding. So what I'm trying to say here, that we have those and we have these, but the matching between them is always quite tricky, right? And then what we see in the ecosystem sometimes is basically those kind of hoppers, sorry to say that, who are basically like these, the same kind of faces jumping from one place to the other. And this is a typical picture that I've been seeing it in different kind of countries as well. And this is sad because we have like other kind of impact-driven entrepreneurs and startups and growing businesses who are trying to do good, like in terms of supporting the society, doing like real offering to the market and like building a real business, but then they do not see this kind of opportunity. And I think this is our role all here, is actually to plug in these to those and then make like see the magic when it's coming. So I believe like when we speak like the Egyptian kind of investments like landscape in general is quite advanced, I would say, from my point of view, even though like we say always that the middle gap is missing in terms of funding, but we have like different support organizations. Like we have the like funding opportunities available for entrepreneurs, not every one of them, of course, like seed funding, angel investments, VCs are quite advanced at the moment, and private equity. But we have to note that like post Ukraine war, actually there are a lot of kind of global recession happening as well. Just like post COVID and then post the war, and then there is global recession happening, and we have to remember that it will affect us if it's not affecting already. But like noting some names, as I was mentioning, we have like different several organizations actually providing these kind of funding for entrepreneurs, all the way like from Sawari Ventures, like the different angel investment groups. So at the moment we have like 5, at least in Egypt, official groups being formulated, like the Acacia Group, Alex Angels, and others. But also we started seeing like these kind of phenomenon of some corporates who are trying to build their own funds. And this is amazing because this would support not only with the capacity of funding, but also with the technical capabilities of supporting the business. Like one good example for that is Ed Ventures, working in the like EdTech space, coming from a very well prominent actually book publishing company as well. So with this kind of actually like scheme, I would say that I have to mention also some numbers here, that the capital deployed in Egypt, unlocking new like funding record, which was basically last year more than $500 million, and that's a big number. And then the number of deals actually in Egypt was actually the top in the MENA region, and it was I think number 2 or 3 in Africa as well. So I think like we closed 160 deals in 2022, which is like the top number of deals. And then the number of investors supporting as well has to be worth mentioning. And one of the best like let's say pictures that I've seen personally is those kind of entrepreneurs, like let's call them like the oldest entrepreneurs in the market, who have started actually being angel investors, so they better support other entrepreneurs. And this is the top for me.
Yes, I think we're starting to see that as well here in Tunisia.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Giving back.
It could be giving back, and it could be also scaling, because you developed like your own kind of resources kit, you would like to plug it into others to scale, and also to support them not to dig deeper into the same mistakes. So better to keep it on the surface in this case. But also this would be building kind of synergies and building these kind of opportunities where if others are working in the same value chain and I am on the top of the value chain as a company, then why not to support there? So we integrate, so we build like a better ecosystem as well. Not only like having like these kind of seeds of hope that are sometimes disappear because they do not see the right support mechanism as well.
Yes, I think they will be ending up like the best investors in the next few years. Totally agree. Let me get back to regulations. Are there any benefits provided by the Egyptian government? And you were talking about the FinTech Act. I would love to hear more about it if you can develop, but how they are helping, encouraging business owners.
Yeah, so basically the regulation is a big question across the continent, right? Is a big
Yes.
kind of circle, I would say. Because basically there is like, we also, it's worth mentioning that there is a big kind of population across the continent. It's becoming one of the biggest in the world, right? And like the regulation has to catch up with that. And this is kind of the dilemma where we have like everywhere. But I believe like spotting the good parts of it, that basically about the fintech in particular, the central bank regulating these kind of the robo advisory and like the nano financing. And then now we have a, I'm not sure, you hear me, right?
Yeah, we lost you.
So yeah, did you hear like I was mentioning that the FinTech Act managed actually to draw a beautiful support in terms of policies and laws to support like different sectors and regulating the robo-advisory, nano financing, the insurtech, tech-enabled consumer financing in general, among other sectors. And before that, a couple of years ago, we didn't have that. And imagine like all of these kind of startups trying to dig deeper into the financial sector or the banking sector, and then they fall in the black hole, right? They disappear completely because there is no kind of regulation, and you cannot actually, coming from outside, tap into this kind of a very robust, strong financial system and trying to innovate inside. This will not be acceptable. But then with this kind of FinTech Act, from my point of view, it allows like many kind of startups to at least try to go through the sandboxing process and try to build alliances with different banks and to find these kind of synergies with the financial and banking sector. And this is a big leap in terms of the regulatory framework, I would say. On the other side, I'd say there's the regulation here, or the regulator's role has been extending not only in terms of putting laws and regulations and policies, but also doing some support activities and support like awareness activities for the ecosystem. One of the biggest examples in Egypt on that was basically is TEEC, which is like the arm for the Ministry of ICT. It's basically abbreviation for Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship Centers. And it's one of the top supporters under ETIDA to the awareness of building different pipeline for entrepreneurs, all the way from female founders or female focused programs to basically building innovation hubs across the country, and also providing different incentives actually for the existing ICT sector in general. And this is worth mentioning. There are also other kind of ministries that started extending into this space, like the Ministry of Planning, the Ministry, of course, of Investment, like on the top, among others. So the regulatory framework started like actually adapting and growing together with the ecosystem, right? Because sometimes you have like this also tension that the ecosystem is growing and stretching, but there's no kind of support needed for that. And I think it's this question, or this kind of positive tension would stay, right? Everywhere, not in Egypt. But I think it's the role of the regulators to be faster enough to catch up with what's happening on the ecosystem level, on the industries level as well, to capture this kind of value as well. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I've been following that in different places.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Very interesting. Thank you, Ahmed. I'm gonna move to consumer behavior and cultural insights. Any tips on how to seduce Egyptians audience while introducing a new product, service, to the market? Are there like cultural elements to keep in mind in order to retain Egyptian customers' loyalty? And I will also, of course, ask about the workforce. I think it's one of your strengths, how to attract key team members, keep them.
Yeah, so this is a very tricky question, and I would share some insights that are kind of non-popular opinions, as we call them. Because basically, when we speak about like Egyptian market, most of the startup, most of the cases, most of the businesses are always kind of steering their efforts and attention towards Cairo. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, yes, Cairo has like almost like, I would say in one day it can accommodate like 40 millions, which is fair enough, But then Cairo is not like a one kind of social norm, or like there's no kind of one social norm or economic norm that is sharing or shared among the same city, I would say. So basically what I was trying to say here is basically that you can actually extend across Egypt because you have like different, very diverse groups. And this is the essence. This is actually the moral. Okay, if you want to really succeed, make sure that you know who is exactly the most relevant customer segment or community that could accommodate your product or service. And definitely you'll find it in Egypt, because you have like different kind of the social fabric can accommodate any product as long as it's aligned with like the ethical and cultural frameworks that we have. So this is one part of it. But also the Egyptian market is kind of super brand loyal. So if you can build this kind of loyalty by personalizing the experience, by making sure that you can connect to them, to the heart, as we say, directly and continuously and personally, this would add a lot of sense. And also, this kind of fragmented market that I was referring to earlier gives an opportunity, but also gives a big challenge. Because if you want to operate in Upper Egypt, it has a completely different kind of entry strategy. And if you want to operate in the Delta region, we have a completely different approach of perceiving business. And if you want to operate in Central Cairo, they are much more kind of, I would say, like aggressive in terms of business absorption. And then if you want to operate in Alexandria, it's different. So it's basically make sure that you know where exactly you are tapping in. But we have seen that most of kind of the conferences, the opportunities, and also the international attraction that happens around Cairo. But then the startups, even from outside, they try to expand in Cairo, right? But then it might not be the right kind of city to scale. Make sure that you know what is the industry you're operating in, at what kind of community that you're tapping into, where can you find this community, how could you support this, how can you personalize this experience with them. And then, of course, this doesn't mean that we should avoid Cairo, because Cairo is kind of it's the capital city, and it's the money capital concentration as well, is happening in Cairo. So make sure that you plug in there, you build the connections and get to know the people. But like Egypt is not Cairo, it's much more beyond. So make sure that you know where to exit. And one last point here is basically you cannot actually plug in from outside directly to the community unless you know the people on the ground, unless you have like focal points. So make sure that you build these kind of synergies and make sure that you build the trust, because with this, like with no trust, you'll not be able to do anything, and you'll not be able actually to launch your own products. And we have seen many cases of like international players, and I mean here like international startups who scaled inside Egypt and failed dramatically because they didn't kind of respond to these kind of cultural sensitivity, I would say. So they were just like trying to apply what they do in Spain or what they do in like whatever kind of country, and they plug it into the market, and then it crashed on the rock of hope, as we call it. And then we have seen others who managed actually to spend many time on the ground trying to understand and respond, and then they customize the offering. So it was not the same when you see it in other countries. And then we have seen the third kind of phenomenon, which is basically that you try to see who is the best startup or who is the best organization who has managed to kind of to plug into this kind of market, and then you try to do an acquisition on it. And we have seen that a lot, of course. And this is the best kind of formula, I would say. In many cases, at least, we have seen it very successful, because you have those kind of talents, as you were mentioning earlier. You have these kind of team members who understand the problem, who understand the offering, who understand how to actually to reach the right customers, to make sure that these kind of problems are being solved through this product. And then when the acquisition happens, if the acquirer actually manages to keep the teams, because normally there are a lot of tension happens here, but if they manage to keep the teams, they are best kind of experts into plugging into the market, other than having others plugging into the market as well.
True. Very interesting.
But also, I've seen, I don't know, like in Tunisia as well, like the talent is, I know that a lot of many good people coming from Tunisia, I mean like talents as well. But also like there is like across the continent in general, not only Egypt and Tunisia, across the African continent and the MENA region, there are a lot of brain drain happening. So, and I think it's an opportunity actually to build actually new opportunities to keep and retain these kind of talents as well, to make sure that we have like high value companies, high value organizations, and also cultures and environment that can accommodate these talents inside the continent, even if they are physically outside, they can actually contribute back inside.
True. Yes, definitely. I will end my questions with maybe, I don't know if you can share like successful startups worth mentioning, like details about the key factors that made them succeed, scale very fast, and then, exits or fundraising, worth presenting to our audience today.
Yeah, sure. So basically, there are actually many good examples here. I'll share like the top in terms of like funding, and then I'll ironically question if the funding is the indicator for success. But then let's keep it conservative first, and then go for others. So in terms of funding, actually, there are many startups who have managed actually to scale and attract a lot of funding from inside Egypt, but also from outside, from the region, but also from international markets. And it's important to mention as well that this kind of funding allowed them to scale beyond borders in this sense. And while scaling, actually, some of them managed to do some IPOs outside, like Swivel. I think we're all kind of following the case of Swivel, and then the scaling that happened, and everyone was proud of them. I'm still proud of them, even though sometimes like the stock market prices dropped dramatically for different reasons. But actually, this is one of the learnings, actually, that focusing on the core of the company and making sure that the foundation is robust and solid enough to accommodate this kind of scale is one of the learnings here. But also we have like other kind of startups worth mentioning in the fintech sector. For example, we have PayMob. PayMob has managed to attract like more than like, it's almost like $50 million. So as Series B investments. And that was like last year, almost the same time of the year, like May last year. So this is one good example to follow, and they are operating like, I think, properly. And then another company that is our startup company that is worth mentioning is Maxab, and I consider it as like one of the biggest kind of retail startups and companies in Egypt. They attracted around like $40 million as pre-Series B. Last October was that counted. And then they operate in the e-commerce retail area. And then they managed actually also to not only to become like this kind of tech startup that is doing the tech part and that's it, but also like, because of the devaluation that is happening in the market and like the disappearance of some of the stocks of the goods, so they managed actually to make sure that some of the basic kind of commodities are available for everyone, like in different across Egypt, basically, through this kind of tech enablement. But also you have like different kind of other startups who have managed it. Like we have also another fintech startup, Lucky, raised like almost $25 million. So the fintech, as I was mentioning, is attracting a lot. And then we have the e-commerce, and you have some other kind of good examples coming from different other sectors. So one of these kind of healthcare startups is Shifa. And it's a proud story that actually one of the things that I'd like to share, that the founders are super humble, and they built actually the startup over a personal real pain, and this made the startup growth trajectory actually super kind of genuine as well. And this is one of the things that we should make sure that we always remind ourselves with, and remind our entrepreneurs with, like being genuine and making sure that the whole journey is genuine, even if you will fail, even if you failed already, even if you are like trying to scale and trying hard. Being genuine is actually the thing that stays, and then your kind of customers, your community are always remembering you for that. And I'm speaking about like Shifa in this sense, because they manage it also to make sure that in the pharmaceutical space, all the medicines that are unavailable, or like they are rare to find or not easy to find, you can actually schedule them on the application, and you will receive them, especially for these kind of rare like diseases. You'll find the medicine on spot, and it's they are very genuine in terms of the mission, but also they managed to build a very nice tech tech product that's scaled, and they attracted nice investments, and they make sure that even the team is super kept. And we have like many other examples, and we can go on and on for that. And I think it's worth remembering that the team is an important factor for that, but also making sure that you have like a very defensible business model that is agile and resilient, because with the changing kind of with the turbulent actually economic situation and social situation, sometimes you can rely only on this kind of resilient like attribute. If you are not resilient enough to change your business model, to change your product as needed, to plug into other kind of customer segments, you might not be able actually to stay in the market for so long.
Sustain, yes, activities.
Yeah.
Amazing. So let me check a bit the chat, the comments we received. Thank you, Ahmed. That was really insightful. It's going to help a lot of people across the continent, but across the world as well. Hi, Nino. So we have a question from Emna. Said, are there any risk or challenges of scaling non-Egyptian business in the Egyptian market? What are the
Yeah, of
challenges
course.
and risks?
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Adnan, for sharing this question. And of course, yes, there are a lot of challenges for that, not only for non-Egyptians, but also for Egyptians. One of them actually would be, I don't know, like if it's proper to mention that publicly, but I'd prefer to stay transparent enough. So basically, one of these things actually is basically the legal structure of the companies. Because, and this is a question that is happening at the moment, like also with the regulatory bodies, like investments are always going outside of Egypt, even for Egyptian startups in most of the cases, when they reach a specific threshold, because the investors' kind of rights have to be well kind of kept and respected, but also the investors, shareholders, but also the entrepreneurs themselves, and that's why so the law is kind of maybe better outside in terms of supporting or making sure that it's kept safe and supportive enough and so on, when it goes to having investments inside a company and you have many shareholders being put there. So this is one big risk that I have seen. And I think there are a lot of questions and there are a lot of conversations happening at the moment. So hopefully we'll see in the coming month change in the laws to accommodate for these kind of investments to stay in Egypt, to support more the economy. And here I'm not only speaking about like to stay in Egypt as Egypt, but also the region, right? And the region here is not only MENA, but also the African continent. And it's super important to stay, to understand that the risks are there, but still, when we speak about, like I was mentioning, that Egypt has the top number of deals, right? 160 deals last year. So even, and this is the beauty of entrepreneurship, that sometimes you see that the risk is there, but as we say it, like as mix of Arabic and English, كلما زاد الرزق, which is the risk, زاد الرزق, which is like kind of the prosperity and like the welfare and like the returns as well. So this is one of the things, of course. Another thing that I was mentioning earlier, it's not a risk, but rather a challenge. That sometimes when you try to scale, with like the Cairoan market, and that's it. But then it's worth mentioning that Cairo is not yet saturated, but it's super saturated at the moment as well. So you have a lot of kind of, it's a landing pad. So everyone who wants to try something, it tries that in Cairo. So there are a lot of competition that is happening. And this doesn't mean that this competition lead sometime to better kind of products or offerings. Sometimes actually it leads to breaking these two, and then the space is left empty. So it's better sometimes to make sure that you see and you keep your eyes conscious enough to see where is the opportunity, where's the right community to plug in your product or offering, and make sure that you scan the market enough to know if there is any other kind of startups have been trying that out or have tried that out already, to plug in with them or to have a chat with them or coffee with them and then ask them. And this is the anti-challenge that we have, that the Egyptian ecosystem is super supportive. And if you like send a LinkedIn message or a WhatsApp message to any kind of founder, even if they raised the threshold of $50 million investments, most probably you'll find like an answer, even if it's late, sometimes, but you'll find an answer. They'll be happy to share some insights in most of the cases. And I think this is one of the elements that we can rely on as well.
Great. We have another question from Uns saying, do you believe the Egyptian consumers are tech adopters? Adopt quickly.
Yeah, tech adopters.
When it comes to e-commerce, mobile apps, etc.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Ons, for this question. And I believe, so Mayssa, earlier we were mentioning that one of the cool things about the Egyptian market, that was in the beginning of the conversation, that basically the Egyptian consumers can accommodate many kind of waves of changes of so on. So I believe like we have enough tech adapters in the community, in the market. So that's part of it. But also we have to remember that COVID-19, the pro of it, we all know the cons of it. The pro of it was basically that it pushed people, it pushed consumers to use applications, to use technology to make their lives better, right? Not because they were kind of doing that voluntarily, but sometimes it was kind of, there was no other options. So I believe also this is an important factor. Another factor that we have to mention that, sorry for that. We have to mention that like most of the Egyptian kind of population is youthful. So with the young youth, you can actually try many kind of tech stuff. And I have to mention that I've lost track sometimes. Like there are some technologies that I cannot understand, but then, like these young kids are like using them like fluently and, without like thinking about like what was happening behind. And we are still stuck in the, the interfacing or whatever. So with these kind of youthfulness in terms of the age brackets, you can also see a lot of Egyptian consumers, if you consider them as consumers here, as tech adapters. Yes, of course.
Amazing.
Can I add something as well?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but just like briefly. So, but it's also worth mentioning that one of the philosophies approaches that I always advise with is basically instead of going for a product-oriented approach, to go through like a human-centered approach. So make sure that whenever you have a product, instead of having the product, make sure that you know the humans using this product, and then accordingly design your product. Because in many cases we see like some companies, some startups, some technologies are failing, not because there are no kind of early adapters, right? But because the technology was built by engineers who didn't spend some time understanding who are the humans behind these markets and why this technology is basically serving these people. So making sure that we understand the problem we are solving and making sure that we customize the product, the tools, technologies, the tactics according to these kind of user journeys would make more sense than pushing a product that we have in some country into our countries, and then when it doesn't work, we say, okay, they are not adapting these kind of technologies. It's worth flipping the coin here.
Yeah, true. So Manal is asking, Ahmed, could you give us a link to reach out Egyptian regulation regarding foreign investment?
Yes, I can do that maybe after the call, but one of the things that is that I could mention here, one of the latest actually studies that was published about the ecosystem was basically coming from ITIDA and Magnet. And ITIDA, as I mentioned its name earlier, coming from the Ministry of ICT, it's basically the IT development agency. And they published this kind of report that is super amazing, called Egypt Venture Investment Report. And it was for 2022.
Okay.
So I can write the name, I think, in the chat. Or if someone can help me like writing it, it's called Egypt Venture Investment Report.
We will. Thank you. Farah is asking about distribution channels, supply chains available in Egypt for product-based companies.
Yeah, so it's I was mentioning that so Egypt is witnessing like intense mega projects, and distribution channels are still like, I think it's always kind of a question. Why? Because basically there are, at the moment we have like around like more than 10 new cities being built, but then also different roads and different kind of bridges and different kind of connections to them. But then we have existing distribution channels that are kind of on the ground, and it has been, I have to say, it has been developing a lot over the past years. Apologies. It has been developing a lot over the past years. So you can reach more kind of places, you can reach more governorates and like districts at the moment. But then it's yet fragmented, I have to say. But with the beauty of having like many kind of supply chain startups as well and logistics startups, you can make sure that you plug in these into places that you can normally unable to reach. So this is the beauty of integration and like building synergies. And then with the supply chains, I believe like there are a lot of focus on supply chain development in general, because normally like the saturation of product-based companies were around Cairo, as I was mentioning, and Alexandria and other kind of places, mean key cities, I would say. But then it has started to shift towards other places as well. So we started seeing different centers, new centers in Upper Egypt, for example, not only Asyut, but others, because of not the distance proximity, but rather the kind of the facilitation of the roads and so on. So I believe actually with the new ports being built or kind of renovated as well, this allows actually others to plug into the system. But but in conclusion, plugging into the startups who are working in the supply chain sector and the logistics sector would facilitate a lot that.
Okay. Another question from Uns as well, like access to market, is it part of the soft landing services you are offering to startups scaling coming from other countries?
Yes, so we do not have it on our website. I have to say that, but what we do always in different kind of conferences, meetups, even in the private conversations we have, or the formal, informal conversations we have virtually and physically, we always offer help. And what we started doing is basically putting, or matching startups between different countries. So this is definitely, this is what we have witnessed as one of the best practices, because the startups could have like more time if they are coming from the same sector or industry to plug in new and do this kind of cultural, social, economic orientation that is going right away. But also another thing that we do from one time to the other is basically connecting some of these companies to other governmental organizations or support organizations who can take their products or like their wishes also right away to plug in them into existing facilities or opportunities. So
Cool. This is, I think, one of the last questions we have from Rahma. Any insights about the real estate tech in Egypt market?
Yes, of course. If you can specify what kind of insights, but yes, the real estate market in Egypt is growing very, very fast. And also we call it the prop tech. The prop tech industry in general is kind of developing intensively, I would say. Especially that I wouldn't say that we have so we know that we have the inflation that is happening in the market. You probably don't know, but there is a lot of inflation happening in the market, but also this led to having many kind of real estate properties in place that need kind of actually disrupting this kind of industry. So with either kind of these kind of apologies, sharing the same kind of instead of leasing, you can share a portion of the apartment. Instead of buying the whole kind of apartment, you can have a timeshare across the year. So you have a nice startup working in this area. We have others working on this kind of summer home vacations, leasing and facilitating that through technologies. We also have like different kind of interesting companies who have managed to build a nice, speaking about AI in general, thanks a lot, Rahma, for that. So speaking about like artificial intelligence, so they managed actually to do interesting AI technology that takes actually the measures of any apartment or any building or any facility, and like in no time it gives you all the combinations available for furnishing, for utilizing the space and like being efficient in that. And I believe like they are booming, and you'll be booming more in the coming few months, hopefully, crossing fingers for that. And these are actually technologies that we haven't witnessed over the past like 5 years, but now we have been seeing actually that is more happening and more coming and more integration with actually real estate developers here. And there's a big focus on smart cities as a sector, because also it's worth mentioning this sector. And smart cities would allow actually many kind of not only real estate technology companies and startups to plug in here, but also others in the sector of water, in the sector of clean tech, and in other sectors, in the smart agriculture, sustainable agriculture. So this would actually give these opportunities. And one of also about the sales solutions, yes, we have a couple of companies, and one of them actually was coming from ICEALEX. Which is basically doing these kind of augmented reality tours for different locations, and then they give you this kind of opportunity to see the location instead of going there yourself and trying to spend many time and like many kind of visits and leads. So it increased the lead generation as well.
Yes, true. Thank you, Ahmed. There's a question from Ramzi Shaheen. Any recommendation for Egyptian co-founder networks we can join?
That's a good question. You can text me on LinkedIn, and I can plug in you into different communities. But then it's worth mentioning, like there are different networks that I'd say like they're not kind of publicly kind of recognized, but then you have like these kind of circles, and these circles are kind of sometimes city related, and some other times they are sector related. And then one of the good platforms to mention here is basically we have like different kind of a couple of conferences that are important to mention here, like the Rise Up Summit and then the Techni Summit and the Startups Without Borders, among others. So we have like a couple of good conferences that if you are planning to scale in Egypt, it's worth visiting once. But then before coming, it's not about the conference itself only, right? It's about like making sure that you have like the scheduling for some meetings, making sure that you have like appointments in place and also places to visit, because this is how you can maximize the value of your visit or of the ticket you can give as well.
Yeah. With this last question, I would like to thank you, Ahmed, for all these insightful sharings. I would like to thank our audience for this interactive session, and rendezvous in a month with another country, another guest to explore more scaling opportunities. Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Mayssa, and keep up the good work. Thanks, everyone. Ciao.